Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the last Headmasters Roundtable of the 2021 school year. I'm coming to you live from Western Maine in a little town called Aquasic. It's actually cool here, so I've got a fire going in the background. I'm hoping for the top Zoom background award of the year. Definitely quite a different setting than we were in last year around this time, but I'm glad to welcome our current parents for this Headmasters Roundtable, which is basically a bit of a look ahead to next year. We're expecting a pretty big crowd, and so we're set up in a webinar format, which means you can see me. I can see your name, but I can't see you unless I promote you. I'm also joined here tonight by Dr. Kristen Spencer, our medical director, who's her video is off, but in the event that the question comes up related to a medical or health issue, she will suddenly appear and answer all of your questions. Without further ado, let's get started. And feel free as we go to enter your questions in either the chat or the Q&A. We will get started. There is a question in the chat right now, which I'll answer because there's a little bit of confusion. The question is this a meeting for new families or returning families? This is a meeting for returning families. But there was a little bit of confusion. It's basically the same content. You're welcome to stay for this one or join the one at 8 o'clock, which is for new families. So let's get started. And perhaps if you want to join the 8 o'clock one, Ms. Baumgarten can put the link in the chat for those folks. So the big theme for next year is a return to normalcy. Our goal is to go back in many ways to how Hill was prior to the COVID-19 pandemic, and also maybe add a few of our what we call COVID keepers from the past year, things that we want to include in our program, in our culture, in our community. And these are just some of the things, sort of the big things that we reported on last year, different areas of school life. And I just wanted to highlight some of those for you. So first of all, we are moving entirely to in-person instruction. All of our classes will be in person, and we are not offering remote instruction, except for in very limited circumstances in the event that someone may be very ill or on a medical leave of some kind. We won't be installing cameras in our classrooms. There is not the option to go remote as there was last year. It's a boarding school, and our expectations that our students will be on campus and our faculty will be teaching in the classroom. We will resume our normal dining hall procedures with seated meals at lunch, buffet, breakfast, and dinner, plus seated dinners once a week in the fall and spring. We will be back in the Millheiser dining room, and we can't wait to get back in there and get back to our seated meal tradition. A big question for many of our parents and students are around athletics and co-curriculars. First of all, we intend to go back to our normal athletic program, both in terms of training and competition. We will have preseason, which I'll get to in a few minutes. For the fall term, we'll have interscholastic competition without any restriction as far as we know at this point. We are allowing outside club sports to go forward. So students who are in club, participate in club programs can do that. The restrictions are normal in the sense that we need to be notified about that, and you can't miss your obligations for school to participate in club sports. And you have to check in and out with the dean's office, that sort of thing. Again, there's no remote option, so you can't take 2 weeks to go participate in club sports activities or something along those lines. We'll be welcoming back, we actually did this pretty much at the end of the year. All of our spectators and fans are welcome at any of our athletic games, no check-in procedures, no distancing, that sort of thing. As far as our other co-curricular activities like theater, yearbook, and other programs, there are no restrictions at this time. We expect to get back inside the CFTA and do all of our performances there on the main stage or in the black box theater. We have added a few co-curricular programs, sort of some of our COVID keepers from last year. and those will be detailed to students, which were very popular, some that were very popular. Oops, sorry, didn't mean to advance there. Day students will resume normal campus access. They can arrive in the morning, go to breakfast, lunch, stay for dinner, visit the dorms, so on and so forth. There's no restrictions on weekends. So day students go back to full campus access as they've had before. As we like to say, they can do just about anything that boarding students can do other than sleep on campus. And they can even do that from time to time if they schedule a social Saturday overnight. Parents are welcome back on campus, back to normal. Parent visits, as well as students leaving campus during appropriate times for campus leaves, checking in and out through the dean's office and our Wave app. We do intend to have Parents Weekend in person on campus, and I'll share those dates with you in a few minutes. We're back to normal dorms. Our common rooms are fully open. Students can visit their classmates in other dorm rooms. They're not limited to flocks or droves or anything like that. Day students will be able to visit dorms as they normally have been in the past. They'll actually be assigned to dorms as part of their community connection. As far as masks and COVID testing goes, as of right now, we don't anticipate much mask wearing or COVID testing, if any. The rates of COVID have gotten so low, we probably won't be using much of this at all. We may ask those who are not vaccinated to continue masking in some circumstances, limited circumstances, and periodic testing, or maybe arrival testing and that sort of thing. We'll keep an eye on things as the summer progresses. We have all the equipment available, and all of us have way too many masks sitting around our homes, so I don't think it's going to be much of a problem. There is some thought that if students are ill in other ways, like if they have a cold or something like that, that masks have been very helpful in preventing normal illness and spreading of normal illness, and we may consider doing some of that. And some people may just be more comfortable wearing masks, so they won't be prohibited for sure. Food delivery, always a big topic for our students. DoorDash, which became quite popular this year, but was also limited. We will resume our normal food delivery policies, but I should just note that even before COVID-19, we were starting to consider changes to our food delivery policies to campus for safety and health, as well as nutrition and wellness. So those food delivery policies will be announced. We may continue with a central delivery location. That helped avoid some DoorDash drivers speeding around campus, not knowing where they were going and endangering our students. And we may do things like that. But there will be options for walking off campus for food as well. We don't imagine any capacity restrictions on activities or gatherings on campus. Certainly, if the state or county continues with any limitations, we'll follow those. But we feel pretty confident that we'll be back to normal. We may have some enrollment pressure in terms of the number of students on campus next year, which may make it difficult for us to seat everyone in chapel. And we can talk about that if you'd like to, but it won't be a COVID type restriction, just a pure numbers issue. Our normal weeknight evenings, study hall will be back to normal, student center will be open, grill will be open, the library and the quadrivium will be open in the evenings for student study and collaborative work and that sort of thing. And of course, no limitation on outdoor spaces that we're aware of at this time. In fact, we're expanding on our outdoor spaces as we did last year, you'll see in a little bit. So pretty much any other area that you might imagine, we're hoping to go back to normal, but these are some of the major areas that people have expressed questions about, and were certainly restricted over the past year. I mentioned a little bit about enrollment, and I wanted to just give everyone an update on what our student body looks like for the coming year. And I've given some comparisons to 10 years ago. This is my 10th year at Hill, and so it gives you a little bit of a sense of how things have changed during that time, but also just general growth of the school during that time. We had a very good year from an enrollment admission standpoint. I think maybe much to do with our successful approach to COVID-19, but also I think generally a lot of changes that we've made over the last 5 or 10 years at Hill have compiled to create a strong attraction to the school. So we will open the school year with approximately, it's projected right now, 548 students That is up significantly over the last 10 years, but even over this year when we opened with 519 students. So we have almost 30 more students anticipated. And let's remember that many of our students, not many, but a portion of our students were not on campus at any given time over the past year. So it'll feel very full, which I think is a great thing. And a lot of students on campus bringing a vibrant community. Our SAT scores have continued to improve. Last year's, it's just one measure of sort of the caliber of our students. Our SAT scores were up, as was our matriculation to top 50 colleges. Actually, last year, despite the craziness of the year and all that we were reading about in newspapers and online about the challenges of matriculation to top colleges, our students, 38% of our sixth formers went to top 50 colleges. Again, just one measure of the caliber of our students, but that's up significantly over the last decade. Our percentage of girls continues to get close to the 50%. We seem to not ever be able to get exactly to 50%, even though we've now been co-ed for 51 years. But that's a number to note. We are increasing the number of boarding students, or the percentage of boarding students next year. Many of that increase, a lot of the 30 student increase was in the boarding community. So you see that we're nearing 77% boarders for next year. Students of color, also an area of emphasis for us in our enrollment and admission program. And we'll have 39% of our students as students of color next year. 22% of our students are international students for next year. That's a little bit higher than in previous years. It's just sort of the way things fell out this year. But we're also seeing students from a larger number of countries within our international student body. So a lot of diversity there. This is actually a little bit lower than normal. The 26% of our students with a family connection, either through a sibling or another family member, parents, grandparents, uncles, that sort of thing. And usually we're about 30, 32%. We had a huge group of legacies in our class of 2021. I think we had 22 direct legacies last year. So a little bit of a dip here, down to 26%, but still a large percentage of our students having a connection to the school from the previous generation. Our faculty is also continues to improve and grow and strengthen. Our full-time faculty for next year, because our enrollment's higher, we've added a few extra faculty members in some key areas, and we've grown that number significantly as well, up to 109 for next year. Our faculty this past year was about 103, so we've definitely added a number of key faculty members in important areas. Our faculty retention continues to be strong among the top group of boarding schools in the United States. 90% of our faculty are returning from last year, and that's about where we've been for the last 5 or 6 years. Then the years of teaching experience among our teaching faculty continues to grow because we have such great retention. So now our average teacher has 16 years of teaching experience at Hill or elsewhere. I'm really proud of the next number. When I came to Hill, we only had about 38% of our faculty were female, and that number is now up to 55%. We'd like to see that be balanced right around where our students are, but it's just how our hiring has been in recent years. But definitely great representation among our faculty in terms of gender diversity. And then faculty of color, another area of emphasis for us, we're up to 19% for next year. So to take a look at the calendar for next year, and as you all will remember, we dramatically changed our calendar last year to address COVID and try to create a safe environment. We're going back to basically our normal schedule with a couple of exceptions, which I'll explain. Our arrival period, I'm going to get into more detail on the first half of the year, or at least the first third of the year on the next slide. So this is just a general overview of the whole year. Our arrival period and preseason period will be from August 23rd to September 6th. Our fall trimester, fall term, will run from September 7th to November 19th. We are continuing the H term, which last year, you may recall, was in the winter, was in January and early February, and was 6 weeks long. This year, it's just 2.5 weeks, and it's between Thanksgiving recess and the winter holiday recess. And it will be on campus, and I'll explain that in more detail momentarily. Our winter trimester will run from January 5th through March 11th. And then our spring term will run from March 30th to June 1st, with graduation on Memorial Day weekend as per normal. So looking a little bit more detail at the first part of the year, here are some key arrival dates and some key overall dates. So our preseason athletic period begins on August 23rd with football players. The rest of our fall preseason invited athletes arrive on the 26th. Our prefects will arrive on September 2nd, as will students who are invited to the theater boot camp by Mr. McGriff. September 3rd, we are inviting our new, they're all new, third form students will arrive a little bit earlier than normal. We wanted to address what we thought included some sort of learning gaps from the past year. And so instead of a 2-day orientation, our third formers will have a 5-day orientation. And we're excited about that. And our prefects will be there to help guide them, as will some of our faculty members. September 4th, the rest of our new students will arrive, as well as our international students. Excuse me, September 4th is just our international students, new international students. September 5th are all of our new domestic and day students will be arrival and orientation. And then all returning students, which is most of you on the call tonight, unless you have a younger sibling, a younger child coming next year as a new student, will return on September 6th. We'll begin our classes on September 7th, which is a Tuesday. We will go back to our traditional closed and open weekend alternation, basically, where a portion of our weekends are closed, which means that boarding students can't go home or go away from campus that weekend. And so we usually do a few of those in the beginning of the year to build community on campus. And so September 10th through 12th is a closed weekend. I mentioned before, we will have Fall Parents Weekend on October 15th and 16th, which will lead into our fall holiday long weekend. Everyone is looking forward to hosting Lawrenceville on campus on November 5th, 6th, and 7th. And then Thanksgiving recess will occur between November 19th and the 30th. I already mentioned the H term, December 1st through the 17th, and then our winter holiday recess on December 17th through the 4th. So it looks like a pretty standard year, our trimesters plus the H term, which we're really excited about, and I'll share in more detail. So students will want to know what the weekly schedule is going to look like. If you want to take a screenshot of this, now would be a good time. This looks a lot like our schedule in 2018-19 and 2019-20. We moved last year to a modified block schedule after we did the Cornell study and tried to limit close contacts, which seemed to be a good idea. But there was definitely some push and pull over what schedule to adopt for the current year. And so we've gone back to our normal 7-period schedule with full schedules on Monday, Tuesday, and Friday, and then 3 long periods on Wednesday, and 4 long periods on Thursday. There's a few minor changes from our previous year in terms of where chapel and advisory are and that sort of thing. But for the most part, this gives us the flexibility for students to have co-curriculars on Wednesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays, but also some meeting periods as well. So that's the schedule. And I think there'll be general sense of a lack of anxiety over going back to this schedule. We did like some aspects of the modified block, but this definitely is a return to normalcy here, at least for the next year. The H term, we will be running this differently than we did last year. First of all, it's shorter, as I mentioned, but our goal is to provide our students with authentic learning experiences. That's part of our vision statement for the Hill School, to give our students real life experience, practical experience, as well as some context around their learning. This year, participation in the H term is required, and there are 3 ways to participate. We imagine that the bulk of our students will participate entirely on campus, which means they will sign up for 2 intensive courses offered by Hill faculty members and staff that are sort of interesting and different. They'll have to choose from different themes. There'll be a morning block and an afternoon block. And then they'll either participate in their normal winter co-curricular program, or they may sign up for an afternoon field study that's related to one of their intensive courses. morning or afternoon intensive courses. Students may also apply to participate entirely off campus. To do this, they would have to submit an application for an independent program that is more than 60 hours of work or experience. And these would be internships, work, an off-campus academic program, service program, and the like. There'll be many more details provided as the year begins, and that would be entirely off-campus. Students could not participate in the intensive courses. They would have to create their own program. That could be back at home. It could be in some other area of the country or the world. But that's really up to them. So they would go home at Thanksgiving and not return until after Christmas. So we anticipate that some students will do this. And this is open to all forms. Again, though, it's by approval, and there'll be a committee that will review this, and you'll have to have an advisor supporting it. The last is a hybrid option that's only available to 5th and 6th formers. And this would be an on-campus, they'd be living on campus, and they'd have an intensive, one intensive on-campus course, either the morning block or the afternoon block. And then they would add to that either an on-campus independent study or a local internship or field study that they would have to help arrange for sort of self-transportation as well. Again, this would have to be approved, and it's only open to 5th and 6th formers. Lots of details still to come. For students who are on winter varsity teams and or who are in the musical or part of the musical, they must be entirely on campus unless they get special permission from their head coach or from Mr. McGriff to be off campus or to be hybrid. The course selection and application process will begin in September. There'll be a course catalog. There'll be details on how to apply for off-campus programs. So if it's something that your child is thinking about doing an off-campus experience or a hybrid experience, it's good to start making some connections now and doing some outreach. But we're not going to be providing a whole lot more detail until the school year begins. So thanks for your patience with that. But we're very excited about this and can't wait to see what our students come up with and what our faculty come up with. Over the summer, there are a lot of forms, and you're used to this, but and you should have received some of this information already, but just some of the highlights here, things that students and parents need to do over the summer. We have a co-curricular activity sign-up form, which is due July 7th from the student. That's for the year, choosing your co-curriculars for the fall, winter, and spring. Student health forms on July 15th. Those are completed by parents using our new electronic health record portal called Medicat. You should have received a link for that. For new students, which there may be a few on this call, a laptop, if you want to bring your own laptop from home, you need to get that approved on July 15th. Very important, we'll be sending out the revised and updated handbook and code of conduct with an acknowledgement form that students and parents are asked to read and sign. It's a great opportunity to sit down with your child and just review all of the rules and expectations of the school. Your signature on that indicates that you understand them, that you've had a conversation about those. And unfortunately, every year when something happens, a student or a parent says, well, I didn't know that rule. And I just have to remind them of this process. So please take that to heart, even if you've been a student coming back, or your child's been coming back for a couple of years, or you had multiple children here. The code of conduct and the handbook does change every summer. We're actually in the review process right now. So please take the time to review that and talk it through with your children. For students coming to Hill from another high school, parents need to complete an authorization for release of information like transcripts and grades and comments, so we can merge those with our own records. We do have an information and emergency contact form that needs to be completed by parents no later than September 1st, and then a religious background form for new families, which is completed by September 1st. That just helps us plan for our spiritual life requirement as well. Always this time of the summer, we start getting questions about when am I going to hear about different things over the summer. And so we thought we'd just share that with you now. Our roommate information is coming out the week of August 2nd. I think that will also include what room you're in. advisors for new students, or if you've changed advisors, that will be announced during the first 2 weeks of July. Ordering books, the online bookstore opens on July 19th, and then classes will be sent out the first week of July, but your daily schedule, which periods you have which classes, will not be provided until students arrive on campus. So last week, we sent out the vaccination policy. Obviously, many schools and other organizations are announcing their vaccination policy. We worked really closely with Dr. Spencer, and I know she's on the call here tonight, so if there are questions that come up at the end, we can answer them, but I'm going to just generally try to go over this again. It is our express expectation that all eligible community members, and that's both our students and employees, will be vaccinated against COVID-19. We are offering 3 limited exemptions for which students and parents must apply to our vaccination review committee. There's 3 here. The first is medical contraindication to vaccination. That means an allergic reaction to vaccination, especially a COVID-19 vaccination. If you had an allergic reaction to the first shot, obviously we don't want you to have second shot, or you may hold off if your physician says so. So for a medical contraindication, we need information from your medical provider. A sincerely held religious objection with some historical objection information there as well. Again, this can be provided either by your primary care physician or your religious leader. And then this third exemption, which is sort of a tentative, or not tentative, but a temporary or time-limited exemption. This is before the FDA provides full approval for the eligible vaccine. Right now it's an emergency use authorization. If a family has an objection based on a medical concern that is related to personal or family history, they can apply for this exemption. However, once the FDA gives full approval to the vaccine, we expect anyone who is under this category to be vaccinated within 30 days of approval. And we won't likely be offering this third exemption in the 22-23 school year, because we anticipate that certainly by then there will be full approval by the FDA, or at least we expect that to be. If a student is exempted, given an exemption under one of these 3 categories, and they live, their primary residence is more than 500 miles away from campus, they must provide a reliable host or guardian within a 3-hour drive of campus for isolation and quarantine. Obviously, if a student is not vaccinated and they contract COVID-19, or they've been in close contact with someone with COVID-19, we have to continue following the isolation and quarantine rules, and we won't be providing on-campus isolation and quarantine facilities next year. So students who receive one of these exemptions need to have a place to go that's reliable, and so you'll need to fill out that form and confirm. There are some international families who may have difficulty getting a vaccination over the summer. We will do what we can to help our students gain access to vaccination. It's pretty easy. You can pretty much go to any drugstore, Rite Aid, CVS, and there's many other vaccination centers throughout Pennsylvania. So if you arrive without a vaccination, our expectation is that you will move quickly towards vaccination in those first days and weeks on campus. We are also requiring the traditional influenza shot for all community members. We did that this year. We had very low levels of flu, and we're continuing that. We do provide limited exemptions for this. Basically, the first 2 exemptions that we're offering for COVID-19, medical contraindication or sincerely held religious beliefs. The flu shot has full approval of the FDA, so we're not offering that limited third exemption. Moving on. This was announced in the email invitation for tonight, so hopefully you noticed this. It's been a long 15, 16 months for all of us at Hill, and I'm sure for all of you. And so we are trying to give our team a break. And our hope is to limit inbound and outbound communications. And that's one of the reasons we're doing this event tonight. to answer all of your questions. We've also created this landing page, which you can take a screenshot of here tonight, thehill.org/families/summer-2021-FAQs, plural. We've compiled all of this information there, critical dates, answers to the most important questions. When am I learning about my advisor? How do I get my books? You name it. All of those things are answered there. And if you can't find the answer there and it's a genuine emergency, there is an email address on that page that you can email, and that gets circulated to the appropriate administrator or office, and they will provide an answer to you in a reasonable period of time. We just really ask that you understand that 1 month to sort of recharge our batteries and get ready for the school year. Our team worked incredibly hard and diligently over the last year to make Hill possible, to make in-person learning possible, and we're just trying to give everyone a little bit of downtime so that they come back energized and ready to go. You will continue to get sort of general emails during that time frame. Those have already been scheduled. I did already mention some key dates for both submission of forms and other things, but if you do send an email during this time and it's not a critical matter, please don't expect a response, and we won't pepper you with things either, and hopefully that gives you and your family some time to relax a bit. Lastly, I just wanted to share a few key campus summer projects that are underway. We have limited summer programs on campus this summer, which gives our facilities team a great chance to do a number of projects. Campus is really busy. I'm just going to share a few key projects that are exciting probably to our families. The first is, I mentioned that our enrollment is up almost 30 students. We purchased a modular construction dorm, which will go on the location of the modular classrooms that have been there for the last 2 years. It will look sort of like this. It'll be a little bit more attractive than that. It has 28 beds, so 14 double rooms for 5th and 6th form girls. Laura McConney, Miss McConney, is the dorm head, and she will be joined by a new teacher, Ms. Taylor, who will be the second dorm parent there. So there's 14 dorm rooms and 2 dorm parents. It has a common room. It has air conditioning, obviously brand new construction, and it will be nicely landscaped. It has a deck, a good location right there by the gym and by the Dell and the CFTA. So students have already indicated their preference for this dorm, so that's already in the works, but that will be added to campus in early August. This is one of my favorite projects that's happening. Last year, we converted the basically empty Headmaster's Garden into sort of an outdoor student center and gathering space. Our class of 1971, who was celebrating their 50th reunion, noticed this, and they donated all the money needed to convert this to a permanent gathering space for our students and community members. You see that there's a permanent pergola there with a louvered roof. There's a working wood fireplace like the one behind me tonight, and all new landscaping. All the masonry is being restored to its original state. There'll be lighting and sound and great furniture. So this will be ready later in the fall, probably no later than Lawrenceville weekend, hopefully a little bit earlier. And I think our students are really going to enjoy it. We're also opening the Warner Center for Spiritual Life and Equity. This is in a small building that's back behind Dutch Village. This will be Christy Adams' office, but also, as you can see here, some areas for small groups of students to gather, to meet. It has a full kitchen, so there'll be celebrations and meals, communal meals. There's a barbecue area outdoors. So it should be a hub of activity for students for all types of activities around spiritual life and DEI. And this is not happening quite yet, but I thought I'd share it. Some of you have heard about this. We tore down the old classroom building in between Wendell and Dell Village, adjacent to the soccer pitch in the middle of campus. And we will hopefully begin construction on this new dormitory village in the spring, and it will be open for students in the fall of 2023. This has 4 dorm houses, all connected through a central common room. Here you can see the central common room, as well as the upstairs is a student resource area. Each of the dormitories has its own small kitchen common room, and there are 6 faculty apartments. This will house 48 students in 4 houses, so 12 students per house, plus 6 faculty families. It'll be a gorgeous new addition to campus. We're in the fundraising process right now, but we can't wait to open this dorm. And to be determined how we're going to use it, whether it's for boys, girls, upper formers, underformers, and we really have a lot of flexibility with it. So stay tuned. And that is all I have. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And Kristen, if you'd like to start your video, we can go to the chat and to the Q&A. And I will I'll go to the Q&A first. Hi, Kristen, how are you?
I'm well, thanks for having me join in the webinar tonight.
Sure. So just so everyone knows, there are 3 ways to ask questions. As always, you can put it in the chat room, but everyone can see that. You can put it in the Q&A, which only Dr. Spencer and I can see. And you can also raise your hand and we can allow you to speak or even share your video. We always like to see your Zoom background. So the first question is there any thought to reorienting the 4th form, since they did not experience a normal year last year and many things will be new for them as well? Yes, we did think about this quite a bit. And where we landed on this was that a few weeks into the school year, I think 2 or 3 weekends into the school year, all of our upper forms, so 4th, 5th, and 6th form, will be having retreats, overnight retreats away from campus. And we'll also be having a lot of form activities throughout the fall for those forms as well. So we are doing some of that, not as much as we're doing for the new 3rd form. We thought with the 3rd form, there was just a lot more discrepancy in terms of their learning experience. Obviously, the social experience was not as robust as we would have liked it. So thank you for that question. This is a question for you, Dr. Spencer. Did the school record the students' COVID vaccinations that were administered on campus in their school medical records, or will they have to re-upload them or share that information with you for the fall?
We did capture those records as the students left the vaccine site, so we have those on hand.
Great. So they don't have to do anything? Do they even have to check a box and say, you already have it?
We are asking that parents help us with the data entry with entering the dates of the vaccinations. So if you can use that COVID vaccine entry on the immunization tab to enter those 2 dates, that would be helpful, but we do have it and we can certainly bridge that gap.
Great. So when is graduation scheduled? That is the Saturday of Memorial Day weekend, which I'm looking here. Knew someone was going to ask this and I wasn't ready. I believe that is the 28th of May. Correct. May 28th. Next question. Do you plan some COVID tests as a regular check of the COVID situation? This is from an international family. Dr. Spencer, do you want to address that? Are we planning sort of routine surveillance testing?
Probably not at this point, but this is going to depend on how the case counts unfold over the fall. I do expect there'll be some uptick probably mid to late fall. We may need to do a little bit of testing at that point, but right now our focus is going to be mainly on symptomatic students and also a little more attention to those who are not vaccinated. Great.
And a follow-up question on that is, if a 3rd shot of vaccination, presumably a booster shot, if that becomes necessary, will it be organized by the school?
I would think we'd be very motivated to have that happen on campus. That's been a big part of getting our community protected. Mr. Lehman was really aggressive with that, along with a number of individuals on campus organizing and pushing for that. And it really is what allowed us to deliver a fairly normal ending of the year for our graduating class.
Up to this point, we used an outside organization, Rite Aid, to deliver that. Is there any talk, Dr. Spencer, of schools being allowed to deliver vaccinations themselves in sort of one-off situations. Might we be the the people giving the shots ourselves?
I would say it's possible. The county was pretty reluctant to go down that path early on. Part of it was vaccine storage requirements and also the history of allergic reactions, that small number that have been the reason that we watch some patients a little bit longer. But some of the storage requirements have eased up a bit over the last 6 months. So I would say it's not impossible, but it's also very efficient to bring a vendor who does this all day, every day. They have processes that are very well developed, and they're great partners for us. So I would certainly look at that first if we need to do a mass scale.
Great. Yeah, it's been great working with Rite Aid. So that's good news. Next question. Just to confirm, for those of us who live more than 500 miles away, if my child has been vaccinated, then we do not need to designate a local guardian family. The answer to that is correct. You do not need to designate a local guardian or host family if your child has been vaccinated. In the event that a vaccinated student were to test positive for COVID, if there was a breakthrough infection, we would assist with that situation in terms of providing on-campus support, unless they could go home or there's someone local that they could go to. So a good reason to go with vaccination. What percentage of students and employees do you anticipate to return with a vaccination exemption? Thank you, and enjoy your well-deserved quiet time this July. Dr. Spencer, do you want to take a stab at that one? You can maybe share where we were at the end of this year.
Sure. So we ended the year with approximately 70% of our students being vaccinated. I expect it to get a bit higher than that. We just rolled out the policy this week, and we've seen just a couple of requests so far. I'm sure there'll be some others, but I do believe that by and large, those who are able to be vaccinated are understanding the importance of doing so in a residential community setting. That really cuts our risk substantially. Our employee base, when we look at our faculty, we were 98% vaccinated that was middle of February. So it was really an important step to allow us to loosen up some of the rules, let the kids enjoy more freedoms, because we knew that those adults who were most closely in contact with the students were well protected. We have additionally about 75% of our entire employee base vaccinated right now. And that was really just kind of a first pass at, we'd like everybody to get vaccinated. We're strongly encouraging it, but now we're setting the expectation, and we do want Hill adults protected. So not everybody has the same risk. We may have a groundskeeper who doesn't have contact with any students. Maybe that's less of a risk. And if that person has a medical or religious objection, then certainly that's something that is not going to directly threaten the student health, also is not going to be as much of a risk to that individual.
Right. For what it's worth, my recollection was with our 6 formers who had much more time to get the vaccine, because we became eligible for 18-year-olds and then 16 to 18-year-olds much sooner than we did for our underformers from 12 to 16. We had a 90% uptake rate for the 6 formers, or very close. I think it was 89 or 90%. And so our expectation, at least my expectation, is that it's going to be quite high. And even in years past, when we've had the exemption for the flu shot, where we've had those 2 first exemptions, it was a very small percentage of our students. So we may see a few more than that, but our hope is, I think maybe I'm speaking out of school here, but I'd like to see that number be as close to 90%, well, as close to 100% as possible, but 90% would be winning in my book. So there you go. Another medical question. Glad you're here, Dr. Spencer. My daughter's pediatrician suggested not getting the flu shot so late in the season since she will have to get one for this year in September. Is that okay?
Not getting one so late last season or this upcoming
I
season?
think they're thinking getting one right now.
Oh, I see.
Get their flu shot in September.
The experts typically recommend we get the flu shot as soon as it's available. Typically that is early September. We typically have had our flu shot clinics on campus early October when we were first able to get the product available. There is some thought that immunity wanes over the months, so that if you get the flu shot in September and then it's a late flu season, maybe peaking in March or April, that maybe one is not as well protected. But by and large, we're not going to know how the season's going to unfold. I think flu is going to be a greater risk this year as it makes a comeback with people no longer distancing, masking. We'll watch the Southern Hemisphere pretty closely. That's our bellwether for what the flu season will do in the Northern Hemisphere. But I would say, I would recommend you get it as soon as we're able to offer that in the fall.
Great. So just to be clear on that, we're just notifying families today that our expectation is that all students will receive the flu shot when it becomes available.
Correct.
They don't have to do that over the summer. Whereas with COVID vaccination, our expectation is that they arrive fully vaccinated.
Correct.
Great. Okay, next question. If an exemption is requested, will there be any additional restrictions placed on the student, like with club sports, et cetera? So I'm going to field that one first, and Dr. Spencer, you can add on if you need to. So as of right now, I think the question was really meant to say if an exemption is granted, not if requested. So if you are granted an exemption under any of the three options, our hope is to not have any restrictions on a student if possible. However, we're going to have to keep a close eye on what happens with COVID. And if we're seeing continued issues or rising rates or resurgence at some time of the year, there may be some restrictions placed on a student, like masking in a large group setting. We don't anticipate any restrictions with club sports, but club sports may put their own restrictions on participation, like they may require vaccination, and they may not give those options. As of right now, our leagues that we participate in are not indicating restriction for vaccination, but that may be something that is outside of our control, in which case we might have to do that. So if there was a resurgence of some kind, there may be some limitations on masking or on testing or on common areas. But we hope that these will be seen more as inconveniences as opposed to restrictions. But certainly if a student who is not vaccinated becomes ill, they will need to leave campus, per the conversation we had earlier about quarantine and isolation. But generally speaking, we're not looking to restrict students, but we are counting and relying on as many of our community members as possible being vaccinated so that we can return to normal. And that is part of that sort of community effort. Dr. Spencer, what did I miss?
I think you nailed that.
Okay, that's good. That's a good score from you. Okay, next question. Do you plan any education lessons about viruses? I think regarding flu and other viruses, it's important to know how the virus is migrated. It's really important knowledge about the world. Dr. Spencer, any plans for virus education next year?
It's a great question. We did a lot coming into the fall last year. That was a big push of how do people get sick? What's happening with this? What are the ways we can protect each other? There were some required educational modules that we made mandatory on Canvas as a course for all incoming students. I haven't thought specifically about some of that for this coming year because partly because we're returning to a new normal. But it certainly is food for thought. So I appreciate your putting that forward for me.
Great. Maybe we'll teach a course in our science department. You could teach, Dr. Spencer. Get back in the classroom. What do you think?
I would love that.
Great. Maybe through our eudaimonia program too. I think I missed the slide regarding dorm assignments. When will they find out which dorm they're in? Thank you. So roommates and dorms come out the week of August 2nd. Okay, we have a hand up from Jean Short. Sometimes it's not Jean though.
No, it's not.
It's never me.
It's if it sounds right, it's her.
I'm Short. How are you?
Well, Mr. Lehman, I just wanted to offer a heartfelt and sincere thank you. Your management, your leadership team, the entire team, the faculty, staff of the pandemic, through the pandemic, has been exemplary. Your communication during all this has been thorough, comprehensive, proactive. The priority you put on safety, health, emotional, physical well-being models the best way to get through this. Your ability to keep the school in person, yet still inclusive of those who required remote learning was, again, outstanding. And I think about six graduating classes worth of students that are materially better off as a result of this collective leadership. Just thank you, thank you, thank you.
Amen to that. And thus the quiet period coming up next month. Well, I share that. I'm not, as you know, I'm not great at taking compliments, but I share that compliment with Dr. Spencer and our entire team, our faculty, our staff, our senior leadership team, and quite frankly, our students and parents who partnered with us and accepted many of these changes and restrictions and changing restrictions throughout the year. We did our best to address and evolve and be nimble, but we wouldn't have been able to do that unless we had partners in that. So you are more than welcome. We are grateful that we all got through this together, and I think came out on top, and looking forward to a year when I don't need to know everything there is to know about COVID-19. I hope to forget it quickly. But thank you for that compliment. Any questions while we've got you, the Shorts from Chicago?
No questions.
Great. Okay. Thanks for joining us here. Okay, I have in the chat room another similar one. I'll read it to you, Dr. Spencer, because I'm bad at reading compliments. I cannot thank you enough for your entire staff's tireless planning and amazing execution of a robust school year for our students last year in the midst of a global pandemic. Ella and I look forward to the upcoming year and the planned return to normalcy. Again, many thanks for your dedication and your hard work. You're welcome. Is seated lunch a daily event or weekly? So we will go back to 5 lunches per week, Monday through Friday, as seated. We usually have 1 dinner per week in the fall term and the spring term on Tuesday evenings as seated. That is our current plan. I still offer the caveat that on day 1, it might send Kristen and me into a tizzy if we suddenly have 700, 650 people in the dining hall at once. To go from 0 to 100 like that is going to be mind-blowing, but that is our goal. But if we somehow do it a little bit more gradually the first week or a few days of school, don't get mad at us. But we will get there as quickly as possible. And then the follow-up question from the same parent: in seated lunch, is a student having his own choices of food? So this must be a new family. Well, maybe it's not. We have plenty of returning families that have never had a seated lunch either. Seated lunch, there is an entree served to the table and side dishes served to the table family style. But then students who wish to have a different meal can go into the pantry and have a salad or a sandwich or something like that. And if students have dietary restrictions, we address those. They can go into the pantry before the meal and pick up their plate of pre-prepared food. All right, back to the Q&A, Dr. Spencer. Will day students have the option to take advantage of their school district transportation? Thanks again. I believe so. I haven't heard otherwise. We'll go back to the normal school district transportation, which I think is a 10-mile radius from Pottstown. And there's usually a time limit on the afternoon buses. I don't know all of that information. If you have more specific questions on that, I would contact the dean's office before July 1st or after July with that question. But I imagine that they'll go back to normal with that. So if you already know how that works, there you go. As a third form parent this past year, just curious, what normally happens on Parents' Weekend? Well, it's been so long, I've almost forgotten, Dr. Spencer. Thanks for that question, Katie. So there's classroom visitations. There are, you have a chance to go to chapel, go to practices. There's usually some sort of presentation by yours truly. There is a wonderful dinner in the dining hall, a celebrity chef dinner with the celebrities being faculty. We will have a music concert, the fall music concert that evening. We will have, let's see, what else do we have? Meet and greets with faculty members. There's some parent gatherings for different forms. There's usually a college counseling session and a meeting with advisors and the like. I think I've covered just about everything. So we can't wait. Hopefully you'll all come. One thing we thought about a little bit about was that to do the fall Parents' Weekend in person, and then maybe add a spring Parents' Weekend, which would be a virtual or maybe a hybrid version. We did actually have a great Parents' Weekend in the spring, and people raved about the ability to sort of zoom into the classrooms. And so we know that not every parent can come to campus in the fall or ever. And so, especially since there will still be some limitations on our international parents, probably this coming year, we'll still have some hybrid options there as well. And so we may have to pull those OWL cameras out of a closet after all, Dr. Spencer. Okay, as our understanding of natural immunity to COVID-19 increases, do you think it will be possible to have, to have vaccine exemptions for the children who have had COVID? Natural immunity seems on par with vaccines, with reinfection rates, et cetera, thus far. Dr. Spencer?
I think there's a lot of science that still needs to unfold on that front. I've certainly heard plenty of expert opinions from really credible sources that the vaccine-induced immunity is really felt to be superior to the natural immunity that one would develop after infection. So I think there's still some question marks there that we're going to have to watch.
Right. Is there any information on that with regards to variants as well? You know, you don't necessarily know what type of COVID you had, whereas with the hope for booster shots, it might cover a wider range of variants. Is that also a factor playing in?
Probably so. There's a lot still evolving there. And the longer that this pandemic goes on with the poorer countries not having access to vaccination, the more chance there is that some variants will develop that will evade or escape vaccination. We may end up in a situation down the road similar to chickenpox. So the varicella virus, for example, it's possible to get a laboratory titer level of antibody that tells whether or not you're considered immune to chickenpox if you have not been vaccinated. That's an acceptable means of proving immunity, but that is well studied. There are levels defined of how high that antibody response needs to be. And to my reading and understanding at this point, we're just not there yet on the laboratory science of what we're able to demonstrate in terms of proven immunity.
Well, as always, Dr. Spencer, thanks to you and your team, we try to be on the leading edge of the science and make sure that we're up to date and adjust our policies accordingly. And the more we learn, the more we'll know. And we'll continue to evolve our policies to support our community and prioritize health and wellness. So thank you for that question, and thank you for that answer. We are out of questions in both the chat and the Q&A. We're coming up on an hour. Maybe we've answered all your questions. I'll give it a moment here just to see if there's any final questions that people want to raise. And then Dr. Spencer and I will go scarf down some dinner before the next session at 8 o'clock. And we'll take care of that. In any event, I just want to say thank you to all of you for joining us. We're excited. I mean, really excited for next year. Normal has never been so exciting to us. And And we're also excited to get back to many of the things that make Hill so special, as I'm sure you are as well. So with that, I'm going to say good evening. Thank you for your attention. I hope that you'll support our request for the quiet period. You can go to that website if you have any questions, and we will go from there. Have a great night, everyone. Have a terrific summer. See you in August or September. Stay healthy, everybody.